Hi everyone, my name is Angeline Jesta and I am from Negros Occidental. And today I will be presenting the principles 6, 7, and 8 of DevCom 206, Module 3, Writing Print Communication Materials. Before I proceed with these principles, let me just reiterate the two objectives of Module 3. First, apply the principles of clear and effective writing in written exercises. Second, compute the readability of selected printed materials using Gunning-Fogg's index. The Gunning-Fogg's index will be presented as well in the following reports by one of my groupmates. So let me just recap to you the 5 principles that were just presented to you by my groupmates. The first principle is think first, then write. Second is use simple, short, and familiar words. Third, get straight to the point. Use specific concrete language. And lastly, avoid using jargon or too many technical terms. Now let's proceed to the sixth principle. The sixth principle, or the principle 6 in this module, is be careful when using idioms. Let's define what are idioms. Idioms are phrases whose meaning can't be understood by the individual words alone. The word idiom comes from a Greek word idios, meaning one's own or private. It is also the particular style or manner of expression used by a person or a group. Unfortunately, there are a lot of idioms that are used incorrectly. So if you are not fluent in English or not a native English speaker, we may not be aware that when we use idioms or when we use these expressions, we are using them incorrectly. So if we are writing, for example, for a community or a public audience, we need to use these idioms correctly. How? We need to be careful when using them, and we need to make sure that we understand the meaning of this specific idiom. And it is our responsibility to learn how to use these expressions correctly, because it may appear or it may be misunderstood by other people, especially that there are communities or other nations that use this specific idioms but would mean different to the other. So what are the common and easiest to understand examples of idioms? The first one that I could share with you is hit the books. This means to study hard. So how do we use it in a sentence? I'm gonna stay home all night and hit the books. So it means I'm gonna stay home all night to study hard.
Tomorrow, I buckle down and hit the books.
Second example is action speaks louder than words. I think this is already a common expression that we use even if we are in the Philippines. So this means that the actions that we are trying to portray do not equate to what we say. So normally you would say, your promises is nothing. Action speak louder than words. The third example would be beat around the bush. It means get straight to the point. For example, stop beating around the bush, get straight to the topic. So this means that when we intend to say something, or when we intend to make people understand, we don't need to beat around the bush. We need to get straight to the point. The next two examples will be Tagalog idioms. So the first one is mababaw ang luha. This means too emotional or oversensitive. For example, a friend of ours just cried out of the blue because he or she was affected by a movie that you were watching. So initially, you would say, ang babaw naman ng luha mo. And the last example is butas ang bulsa. Obviously, this means walang pera or no money. So, how do we use this in a sentence? Butas ang bulsa ko pagkatapos naming mag-out of town ng aking pamilya sa Tagaytay. Well, obviously, if you would spend a night in Tagaytay with your family, it will really cost you a lot of money. Hence, butas ang bulsa ko. We, as communicators or as DevCom practitioners, we need to be reminded, or we need to remember, that if we want to use idioms in our DevCom materials, or let's say, for example, use it in an article, we need to research on that specific expression first, because it might give a different meaning to our readers or to the people that we intend to share these materials with. And sometimes, as I've said earlier, idioms might be misused. So it is really important for us to study them before using them in our communication materials. Now, let's move forward to the next two principles that I am going to present with you. And these principles will help us understand how we put our words together into sentences, and then into paragraph, and then into a whole new article. These principles are important in influencing the readability of our material that we're going to produce now or in the future. The seventh principle is keep your sentences short. I think if you're a news writer, you would get this principle by just reading the title alone. And if I remember it correctly, in news writing, one sentence is equal to one paragraph. And as much as possible, we need to keep those sentences short. So, why do we need to keep our sentences short? There is a short and long explanation for this. The short explanation say, longer sentences are often hard to understand. The longer explanation say, longer sentences mean words, more words mean more relationships that need to be built within these words. Therefore, the more effort needed to understand the sentence, and the more effort needed to read the sentence, the sooner the reader will quit. So, what do you think? The shorter explanation or the longer explanation? The shorter explanation, right? Because the longer explanation, it looks like we're being redirected to another paradigm, or we are being shifted to another meaning, or there's just a lot going on in this longer explanation. As DevCom practitioners or as communicators, it is important to note that the average sentence length for most of newspaper or most articles or most communication materials is only about 17 to 20 words per sentence. Siguro if we think about it, ang hirap, no? Kasi as communicators, we have a lot to say in our minds. And we want, as much as possible, we want to include as many ideas as we want. So how do we trim down our sentences to be effective in our materials? First, punctuate your sentences. Second, edit your sentences. Third, rewrite your sentences altogether. Let me give you an example. This example is just for this reporting purposes only, and it didn't happen in real event. So let's go with the longer version first. Attorney Lenny Robredo, chairperson of Angat Buhay Incorporated, attended the inauguration of the new public library in Cadiz City, where she highlighted the importance of education and accessible resources, emphasizing the library's role in empowering the community. Her presence underscored her commitment to the public service and initiatives that support learning and development, making the event a significant moment for the city. This can be rewritten in a shorter form. Attorney Lenny Robredo highlighted the importance of education during the inauguration of the new public library in Cadiz City. You see the transformation from longer to shorter version and how the meaning is still portrayed in the same way, right? So, as you can see, it is really important to rewrite our sentences into a shorter form and to keep it in mind that it will help our materials more effective and more understandable by our audience.